What we're looking to do to best utilize and not, I mean, we could go for under 3/4 of a mile statute visibility, but in talking with Lifeline, that's not, I mean, that would be great, that'd be awesome, but it's not necessarily worth the extra to go there. So really what we're targeting is this less than a mile statute mile visibility down to 3/4. And basically, I just kind of run down through these, but again, these are all the requirements to get that instrument approach procedure. Your hat, which is height above threshold, it's got to be greater than 250 feet. We've got that, and everything in green is good. Your TERPS glide qualification service is clear, and the design of the runway makes it that way. Final approach purpose. Some of this isn't required, so I skipped through that. Your 20-to-1 TERPS procedures are clear, and that's based on the design of the runway extension. It's on the ALP. Got that. Minimum runway length's got to be 3,200 feet. We have that. It's got to have runway markings have to be non-precision. We have that. Runway hold position signs and markings are non-precision. Those are part of the runway extension project. You have some of those already. Runway edge lights have to be HURL or MERL, high intensity runway lights or medium intensity runway lights. You have medium intensity runway lights, so that's requirements met. And the parallel taxiway, as you can see, is required to get those minimums. I don't know what happened here, but approach light says recommended. So those are, and again, it's recommended. When you get into the less than 3/4 statute mile, then you start getting into Mausers, and those of you that are pilots coming in, that's the whole bank of lights. If you drive by Bangor Airport on the highway, you see those. Those aren't required, they're just recommended. And then the rest of these are all green. Survey, we're going to have a survey done as part of the runway project. That's required, so that'll be taken care of. So the only outstanding issue here is the parallel taxiway and its inclusion, its construction. So just to give you some stats and some data on that project. We're estimating that project to be about $5 million. There is quite a fill on the northwest end, just like there was for the runway. Funding, there's actually 3 opportunities to fund this. The first option was through Omnibus, and we were granted approval by the board to put together and forward an Omnibus application back a few months ago, late October. And so that's in. We're still waiting to hear on that. There's actually 2 opportunities to get discretionary grants. One is this coming May. So in case the omnibus doesn't come through, there's the option to put in a grant for discretionary this May, and then this is actually scheduled in the CIP in 2021. So there's several times here to actually get that funding. Force account will probably do the same thing that we did for the runway extension. There's a fair amount of material. So if any one of those 95% options comes about, I'm pretty confident to sit here and say today that I dare say that most, if not all, of that local funding component of this project will be paid for. And the design, what we're looking to do to really complete that and be whole, especially with when we put in the omnibus grant, it was really, we said we would be ready to accept those funds. And being ready, the last step, the only step, is to actually do the design. The permitting's been done, the environmental's been done, the planning's been done. So now it's just a matter of putting that design together, getting it to bid, and getting those numbers. So all that design is AIP eligible. One of the things that that was we'll talk about it a little bit here is annual costs. I think that's a big component that doesn't necessarily, well, a lot of times get overlooked. We want to know how that's going to impact our budgets and taxpayers as we move forward. So what I did is I put together some annual costs based on some of the drivers of the annual expenses for the airport. And you can see here the runway extension right now. We've got a pavement of 357 square feet, 357,000 square feet. We have 76 acres of mobile acreage, and we have about 75 airfield lights. With the parallel taxiway implementation, we'll increase that to just over 500,000 square feet of pavement. Well, our mowing actually decreases, and then our airfield lighting is going to increase substantially. There's a fair amount of lights, edge lights required for the taxiway. So you can see in a percentage-wise, we're up 41% on pavement, minus 25% on mowing surfaces, and then airfield lighting's up 213%. So when we look at costs, Rebecca was able to provide me with some of the costs, and then I took some of what Joe Roach had put together in about 18 months ago, or maybe even a little bit longer. And so we put a number. We know the numbers roughly what they're budgeted for these components, and we have a total cost of $25,000. Now the total airport budget this year is $41,000, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there. But $25,000 makes up the majority. The rest of it is, salaries and fuel and some of that other stuff that putting in a parallel taxiway isn't going to affect. It's going to affect winter maintenance. It's going to affect summer maintenance, electricity, and repairs. So what we did is we, for the parallel taxiway, we just did the math out with all these percentage increases, and we come up to about $35,000. So $25,000 to $35,000. So a net increase of about $10,000 on the airport budget moving forward. And you can't quite see it on the bottom, but that's about a 25% increase. So that's a good number to know. That's a significant increase. And so as we come with problems, we should also come with solutions. And so we want to talk about efficiency and sustainability. So one of the being sustainable is, we've got a force account revenue. It clearly states for airport use, and when we talked in the airport committee meeting beforehand, we talked about, there may be some, the town should have some discussions about airport maintenance and CIP plan and how that force account revenue dovetails into that. So it's a one-time fund, so should we be really using it for operational expenses? Maybe, maybe not, but that's certainly a discussion that should be had. Crack ceiling reduction is just one kind of small thing, but since we have the new pavement, you're really not going to need to do the crack sealing that we've done in the past. And then all that is AIP eligible. Typically, up till now, that part of the project has been paid for locally. So why not use 95 cents on the dollar to get that paid for? And moving forward, we'll incorporate that into projects. But since you're going to have new pavement out there, we don't anticipate a bunch of crack sealing and whatnot. Some of the other things, snow removal techniques, there's some room up there, I think, to revise how we do that so that we're reducing those costs. And again, that's a big part of the annual budget. One of the things I'll get into in a minute is a solar array. We talked about this and included it in our environmental assessment and in our planning. And so I'll go into that in just a second. But again, that's long-term sustainability. And Guy has done one in Rutland, Vermont, and we're aware of a fairly large solar array in Sanford, Maine, at the Sanford Airport. And then a hangar. I mean, you put up a 10-bay hangar, the town's getting revenue from that. So it's about making it sustainable and being efficient with future funding. So one of the things we really wanted to get into, because it is part of the it was part of the environmental assessment, and again part of being sustainable, is the solar array. So over on the right here, in Rutland, Vermont, we put a solar array in here. This is the runway right here. Put a solar array in here. The bottom is kind of what that looks like as a finished product. And Guy can get into this maybe a little bit more, but they had students come in and help build these frames. They had hired an electrician to come in and finish plugging everything in, but what we put together here, and I know it's kind of small here, but basically put together what that costs. You know, with say 3 arrays, 6 arrays, or 9 arrays. Let's just take the smallest one here. An annual electrical cost for $12,000. You put a 3 array system in, includes inverters, mounting brackets, all that stuff. You're talking a total cost of about $46,000. So the ROI on that is about 3 to 4 years. Now, $12,000. The annual budget right now for the airport is only $4,000. So there's some excess there that can be used for, you know, towards other departments of the town. So as I see it, that would be a very good investment for the town. Got plenty of open space up there. You know, those things that, you know, they put them in at many airports. So
Shane, is that eligible for federal funding?
It is not. The one we built in Rutland is right down the middle. It's 6 array. It's 265 solar panels. The top picture is me with the local students. We hung all the panels. Most of the cost was the materials. We used the students in the technical school to hang all the panels, so we saved a lot of money. That particular airport was $24,000 a year was their power bill, Rutland, Vermont, and they turned it on December 15th of 2015, and they haven't paid a power bill since. In fact, the only complaint they had at the state of Vermont was that it was generating too much power and we were actually getting money back, and the state doesn't want to make money, so they were upset, so we applied it to another airport. And similarly here in Rangeley, you could apply that to up to, Shane did some research, up to 5 meters. So you could, in essence, if you look at the furthest one off to the right, if the airport's total appropriation is $50,000 a year, there's plenty of room here on that airport to install one that would replace the entire airport with still about a 4-year return on investment for materials.
What's the original investment?
For the materials, as you can see, for the 9 array was about $140,000 for materials. We use local, the local kids and our own to do it. We did our own labor. So we didn't bring in a contractor to install the thing. We installed it. Say again? Life expectancy? Sorry. Yes. Can I answer that question, Mr.
Go right ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
If I remind the first one, everybody else
Yes,
remembers.
thank you. I'll remember now. 20 years are what the average life expectancy for solar panels are at this point, but they're getting better and better at it. And we did point out, second line down, ocular study. In order to construct on any airport in the United States, you have to do a reflectivity study. It's called the ocular study. We did it at Rutland. And you use the right type of solar panel so you don't have reflectivity issues with pilots that are flying in the pattern. They won't get blinded with the types of panels that were installed.
That's important.
So again, you know, this is just a small piece of the puzzle. It's not necessarily why we are here, but we certainly want to bring this to everyone's attention because it's about being sustainable. It's not just about adding costs to the town. So several options there. You know, from our perspective, the steps forward really are, again, like I pointed out in the beginning, is get the final design and bidding so that we have numbers for the FAA when and hopefully they award an omnibus grant, and for, if that doesn't happen, a discretionary grant by May 1st. So again, it's about being shovel ready. That's why we got the grant in September. I think that was very evident, and so that's kind of what I have so
Good.
far.
Let's open it up to questions from the public, please.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, if incorporated, would this be included in the existing expansion plan? Would that be something to be done right now, or they put a shovel on the ground later for the addition?
You put a shovel in the ground later, yeah. It'd have to get bid, and more than likely that wouldn't get constructed until 2020 at the earliest. Yeah.
You had a thing about the lighting. You're talking about the little lights on the
Yeah.
runway.
Yep.
160 of them, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, okay.
Yeah,
And are they turned on by the pilot, or are they on?
they are. Yep.
So they're not on all the time,
No,
like the regular lights.
right, they'll pilot control.
Okay.
The process by which you get lights on at the airport, other than the beacon, is a pilot will fly over at some distance out, click the radio a prescribed number of times, and then they come on. There's 2 intensities, correct? There's a medium and then there's a high.
3 times or 5.
So it'll turn the runway and the parallel part.
It will.
At the
It all
same
comes on at
time.
the same time.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Rebecca, I was talking, I couldn't hear you.
There's 2 intensities.
Before,
Hold on, John?
Steve, you had asked Guy about use of FAA funding for the solar arc. What about the force account money?
Yeah,
That
force,
be used?
absolutely. Force account money can be used. They want that money to be used for projects or operations that
Would you
will-
explain force account to everybody here, please?
Absolutely. So or Shane,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
you asked me. So, force account is the resources, the local resource, which in this case is Chick Hill, all the material that's being pulled out of there. The FAA has negotiated with the town through a contract to have a dollar amount for every cubic yard that's removed. That money is being put into a local account, which is owned by the town, separate account, interest bearing, and can be, and the dollars that are in there, we're estimating is gonna accumulate to about $600,000, which will be in that fund. That money can be used for the airport, specifically for the airport. You can't pave your highways, you have to use it for the airport. So the money can be used for operations and capital projects or match money for federal projects that are in the hopper.
Go ahead, Jane.
I'd just like to recognize Josh Dixon from Lifelight. I don't know if, where is Josh? Did he- Oh, sorry. Is there anything, is there anything you want to add to this before we?
Josh,
here to
please
answer
stand up
questions.
and introduce yourself to everybody.
So I'm Josh Dixon, I'm the aviation systems manager for Lifelight. I look after the airplane, do a sundry other things. We've been kind of involved with this project from the get-go. Obviously, our concern is primarily accessing the Rangeley Airport with our King Air. As everyone is aware, this is pretty far away from any sort of trauma center, cath lab, anything like that. So by us being able to get up here with our airplane, we can get to the Rangeley area and provide critical care to the local area and evacuate people as need be, even when we have inclement weather to a point. So we're interested in seeing the airport develop to support the operation of our King Air. I've been in on the conference calls when we've been speaking with Tavar and the people from the FAA about the requirements for building a good instrument approach up here to the runway. And they have indicated that part of that needs to be the parallel taxiway. If we could get the approach without building the taxiway, then we would obviously be for that because we get it a lot sooner. And that's actually what's more important to me. So by whatever means we can get reliable access here, that's what we'd like to see.
Steve, can
Thank
I
you.
ask Josh a
Yes, go
question?
ahead.
Yeah.
So can you explain to people how the parallel taxiway affects the approach? Like, most of us aren't pilots, so.
Sure. So my understanding as to the reason why, and Shane, Guy, if you want to correct me if I get this wrong, but my understanding in talking with Tavar and Sean Render's office from the FAA is that what the parallel taxiway does is as aircraft need to get onto the runway, if they have to get in the middle of the runway and back taxi and then turn around, that creates a potential safety risk to where they will only give you they will put a visibility restriction on the approach. And what I mean by instrument approach is basically the FAA says, we promise that if you go from this altitude to this altitude on this heading and at this speed, you're not going to bump into anything when you can't see out the window. That's essentially what an instrument approach is, and oversimplifying it. So what they don't want is to turp an approach for like half a mile, and then we pop out at the bottom of the approach getting ready to flare, and there's an airplane sitting there. And the parallel taxiway is what they want to see to help guarantee that there won't be an airplane back taxiing down the runway when we're trying to land. That is my understanding.
Okay, we got a few minutes. I'm not gonna let the Board of Selectmen talk. I wanna hear from out there. Yes, Mark?
On the instrument approach design criteria, on the approach lights, it says recommended, and is there any guarantee that they won't be required?
The current design standards doesn't require them.
Okay, so
Current design standard does not require them currently. Who knows for the future? Jim?
There's one more question about the lights. When you said there's 160 lights now, are a lot of those taxiway lights?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're blue, and they're not bright lights, they're just a blue dim light.
Thanks for the clarification. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
So, I may be wrong, but it's my understanding that in the long-term plan of the airport, that we have to, even if we don't do the full parallel taxiway, that we have to maintain the current taxiway, and that there's a plan to upgrade that at some point. I thought it was 2021. And so if we don't do the parallel taxiway, the full parallel taxiway, the cost to the town will be more because we won't have the opportunity to potentially get this omnibus grant.
Want to address that, you guys? Yes or no? Clarification?
Yeah, there's definitely some savings by piggybacking this on, for sure. And yeah, the opportunity for omnibus is there right now. I mean, the last time we saw this kind of funding was during ERA in 2008, 2009. So it's been 10 years since that was, that happened.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Coop?
The only thing I would support, if you suggest that you support this, is based on one of our family members needs the cane, friends or family members, and the weather is less than 300 and a quarter mile, and they can't come in. If that child is not worth $5 million to any of us, I'd ask you that. Tell me
Okay,
what.
thank you, Larry. Questions? Yes, sir.
Two quick questions about the solar array. And you say if we should generate enough electricity that it pays for itself, and we can't sell it back to the utility, is that what I'm hearing?
It's my understanding, I'm not an expert at that, but it's my understanding that you can apply whatever you have excess to 5 other accounts. I don't think that they're
Within
gonna.
the town?
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna.
So the
Yeah.
Chick Hill could utilize the funds, that kind of
Hold
thing?
on.
That's what I, yeah.
Are you going to clarify, or?
Yeah, no, that's what I mean, Chick Hill has the largest electrical account in the town.
And closest in proximity?
And it's closest in proximity, so that would be a huge savings to our taxpayers.
Right.
That is assuming that we can apply it to that. We have to find out the rules on
Right,
that.
right. And the other thing, any issues with birds with the solar array and some of with the new technology, they're not drawn to it. And I'm just trying to
Yeah.
disavow any of the concerns about them frying on the panels, that kind of thing.
I can answer that if you'd like.
Okay, yes, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, so no birds at all. Again, this solar array, I would highly encourage anybody, if they're interested, to call Chris Beitzel at the Rutland Southern Vermont Regional Airport. He was there, he's the airport manager. And when we installed this in 2015, he has had no issues, and it's still producing to this day. Secondly, to answer your first question, the area that we're talking about, that we did at Rutland, was only a quarter of an acre. So we're talking not a big area, it's really a quarter of an acre. You could, and I'm sure with coordination with the FAA has agreed to this, if it's going to support the municipality and the owner of the airport, you could add, and this is designed as such, where you could add 3 or 4 more arrays and continue in a lateral, on a linear distance along the runway parallel, so it doesn't interfere with the airport, doesn't interfere with any future development, and it helps the town as a whole.
Okay, so clarification. Under the solar array panel page, if you want to quickly go to that, my colleagues here. They did the 12,000, that column,
No, they did the center.
they did the center one, and that's a quarter of an acre.
That's a
So we
quarter
can
of an
assume we'll keep this all under an acre if that's a concern to anybody here.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
How about from the public, any more? I'm gonna let it keep going, because we had quite a nice presentation. Yes, Marie?
I'm sorry, I came in late. Are you looking any buildings with this taxiway?
No.
I didn't hear, I'm sorry, Marie.
Hangars, buildings?
Any buildings being moved with the
The
taxi?
terminal,
No.
any of
No.
that being done?
No.
And it won't have to be done?
No. Thank you.
Well, let me clarify that. The building, the little shack that's not being used right now,
Oh,
I think
I
that may.
apologize, I forgot about
Yeah,
that little.
that may have to be removed, but none of the others.
Was that what you were referring to, the little one with the?
No, I was referring to anything, because I thought in the whole main plan, there was an idea that the terminal building would be taken down, a bigger one built, and
Well,
I just didn't know that had to be.
I think what you're referring to, that little building used to be called the terminal building, it had a phone in it, and it had it's next to it's just a little bit behind the gas pumps. Those will have to be relocated, but the building itself is not for use at this point. Does that help you? Want to make sure.
Yeah, you said
Okay.
it was gonna be moved to that other building.
We'll go as long as it takes for you folks. I want to make sure we get it in.
We've got another public hearing at 5:30.
Yep.
Just to,
I'm kind of hurrying here, young lady. Yeah.
just to clarify,
Really?
I would imagine that the fuel tanks would have to be moved as well. The fuel tanks would have to be moved as well. Did you say that? I'm
I
sorry.
believe so.
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer right now, but more than likely.
Yeah. That wasn't discussed. All right, folks. I'll go a few minutes if you got it. If not, we're going to move to the second public hearing. I'm sure you all want to stay for this. All right, the next public hearing, and thank you, Cindy, for keeping me straight here. I can't imagine you didn't notice I was sort of hurrying. But, all right, here we go. Open the public hearing at 5:32:33 for the marijuana ordinance. And we'll open that up with whatever questions you have. Ordinance Committee, I'll just preface this by saying I've been working hard. We've had some hearings, and they're gonna, some informational meetings, and they're gonna have some public hearings in the future year.
We already had one.
Yep. We're gonna have more, correct?
Yeah.
That was a
Yes.
question.
Yeah, I think we are. All right, questions?
No questions, comments? May I?
Sure.
Okay. I made this similar presentation at their public hearing that they had because not all the board members were there, not all this public was there.
All right, let me start off by apologizing. It's the first meeting I've had to miss. I've had some surgery on my thumb. I had to have it checked out. I've been waiting months for an appointment. I couldn't make that one. I
Completely
apologize.
understand.
Life got
Which
in
is
my
why
way.
I would like everyone to be informed about my feelings about
Yep.
the marijuana ordinance. At that same reasoning why you weren't there, I had a medical appointment at Franklin Memorial Hospital. Had the occasion to spend considerable time in their lobby. And while in the lobby, I was fortunate enough to find one of these, or a stack of these, about Rangeley in their lobby. Experience Rangeley. It-
People can't hear. There are, there's a couple of seats in here.
This,
Go ahead.
this
Go
by
ahead.
far is about the best brochure I've ever seen put out by the Chamber of Commerce advertising in our area. And in it is a lot of information about businesses in the area, improved businesses, new businesses, charitable organizations, of which Steve is the chair of one of them for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and all reasons why we want to draw people to the town of Rangeley. One of the other organizations that's listed in here happens to be the Rangeley Friends of the Arts. They do a tremendous amount of promotion for children in this community. And what I had said at the previous meeting, I would dread the day that on page 37, where the Rangeley Friends of the Arts has their feature with the dancers, the children dancers in there, that on the opposing page, we would have a commercial entity promoting the sale of marijuana in our community. That's very distressing to me as a father, as a grandfather, as a citizen, as a former representative of this town. I do not think that's what we want to use as a draw to get people here. We have lots of rental properties in this town. We can't always manage who uses them or what they do in these rental properties, but I would dread the thought of coming up here, having a family reunion in a building where you had a bunch of pot smokers in there beforehand come into something like that because they can readily access the purchase of those materials within our town. At a previous meeting, one of the ordinance committee members stated, well, we have not yet incorporated anything in the ordinance to deal with the sale of medical marijuana. Well, for Lord's sake, we don't even have a pharmacy in town for the sale of regular pharmaceuticals, let alone incorporating a medical marijuana facility in this town. Every one of us cannot buy pharmaceuticals in this town. We have to go out of town. Before we do anything about medical marijuana in this town, I'd like to see an effort to try to get a real pharmacy in this town. I understand people have needs that they can benefit from medical marijuana. That's proven. I have no objection to that. But before we have an ordinance that says where we can sell a medical marijuana or produce it, for crying out loud, let's have a facility that sells regular pharmaceuticals and incorporate that with it. Goes without saying, I am not endorsing the commercial sale of any marijuana product in this town. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you.
Steve?
Appreciate everybody's opinions. Whether you like it or not, they need to be heard. Next.
Yeah, can I just say?
Nope,
I-
public hearing, and
Belong
then
to
I wanna get
Gary.
everybody in the public first, and then we'll
Okay.
chime in. Yes, hang on.
I kind of agree with a lot that Gary said about being a grandfather and this and that, but I also think that if we don't have an ordinance, and right now it looks like you're trying to restrict it from Depot Street to Allen Street, which I think is great, and if we don't have an ordinance, it's gonna end up somewhere where we don't want it. And so I think we do have to protect the town and the taxpayers of the town, and the other businesses in town.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir?
I appreciate that, I just want to say one thing, I worked on the
I
ordinance.
want,
committee.
it's good, I'm gonna stop. Not everybody knows everybody.
Okay.
So please introduce
I'm
yourself.
Scott Wilson, and
Thank you.
I've been on the ordinance committee.
Thank you.
Being on it doesn't mean I want it, okay, but appreciating the fact that there are folks who do want it. We've worked hard to try to balance those interests, but my preference is it doesn't come. Thankfully, the way the state passed their law, the state said, okay, we're gonna allow this, but communities have the choice of saying we want it. If a community doesn't make that active choice, if they don't opt in, it is not allowed. So, Kenny, if no ordinance is passed, if it comes up to vote in June, and the ordinance is defeated, there will be no marijuana allowed in the community. If the ordinance is passed, sold, I shouldn't say allowed, there'll be no commercial selling of it. If the ordinance is defeated, if the ordinance is passed, it'll be allowed under these conditions. So what we've created, the ordinance does not mean it's going to be allowed. The ordinance says if it's allowed, these are the conditions under which it's allowed. So, like myself, if I don't want it, I can vote no in June. And if enough people say no and the ordinance is disallowed, then we don't have it. On the other hand, if the ordinance is passed, at least there are some restrictions in place. Not ideal, not optimal, not what I'd want, but at least I know that the state has structured it that way, so.
Thank you.
Understand that.
Thank you. Mr. Coon?
Larry Coon from McCossick, but has the providers of medical cannabis been involved in the ordinance writing?
Okay, a good question. Would you speak to that? Tell everybody who's on the board and who they represent.
Myself, Luke, Mary Bray.
Luke Sarais?
Yep. Scott, of course, Ethna. Is Ethna here? No.
So the general feeling of that is...
And Tricia is also there. Well,
Secretary.
What's his name?
okay.
Oh, basketball.
Here's a question. Go
I
ahead.
thought you were trying to tell me another name I forgot.
So having not read the ordinance,
That's it, and myself.
it's fair to assume that there's been a fair amount of thought from both sides of going into what's best for our region.
As Donnie was describing earlier, there has been a public hearing. There's been a couple of informational meetings as well, where people have chimed in with their positions. And I can say, and I think the board will agree, is a great deal amount of thought gone into the construction of the ordinance. And they've solicited information from other municipalities.
So both parties have considered this together. And if it's probably gonna become a necessary evil one day, because the state's gonna say it's fair game, we certainly should consider an ordinance that works for both parties. It's not next to the church, and not next to the kids, and not next to this, and not next to that. It doesn't have neon lights flashing, cannabis is for you.
Nobody could have neon
That's a
lights in
sidewalk.
town anyway.
Some of the places I've seen.
Not gonna happen.
Yep, thank you. Your point, you got it all, Larry? Okay, Bill.
Valerie Zapolsky from the RFA. I have two comments. One, when we had the public hearing with just the ordinance committee, there were a couple of recommendations about to change the ordinance, and they said it would be possible to still change it. And the thing that came out tonight hasn't been changed yet, so I just want to make the selectmen aware of one of the changes, because that's the one I was in favor of, was that the exclusion zone was Depot Street to Loon Lake Road, and the reason to go to Loon Lake Road is because the kids walk from school down the sidewalk and into town, so just exclude the school walking zone. And then, because this exists so far, I mean, and I said last time that if you're gonna write, this looks like it's well prepared, there was just that one little thing we wanted to add to it. Does this automatically have to come to a vote, or can the selectmen say, no, we're not gonna put this on the ballot this year, let's wait and let somebody else So we don't even get a choice to vote on it. So we can just say, no, we're not gonna decide yet, we're gonna wait for somebody else, file this away for a year, wait and see if other municipalities have problems, look at what has ended up in the news and the disasters that happened, and then reconsider this after somebody else has experimented with it. Is
We'll
that a
give you the
possibility?
answer. We're gonna start with Donnie.
The problem is if you don't have something in place, and then what? I mean, this is gonna be basically a referendum on whether we're gonna have the thing or not.
Right, but what I'm saying is, since you have to opt in, do you necessarily have to even vote on opting in? Or is it required to have the option of opting in, or can we not even consider it for another year?
No. I know you're chomping at the bit. Go ahead.
No, I mean, you're right, it's up to the selectmen to decide what goes on the selectmen's warrant. So you know, if this appears to be an unfinished product that needs more work, you know, we need that feedback.
Well, I don't necessarily say that it's unfinished, what I'm saying is, it is unexperienced and untested, and I would rather have somebody else test it.
Okay. Can I just say that if for some reason we decide it's not gonna go on the ballot, they can get a petition up with 10% of the voters in this town and make sure it's on the ballot, and it doesn't have to be this. It can be, do you want a marijuana store or not?
But that can't be for this year, because we
It
already.
can be for this.
Oh,
No.
absolutely can.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody else had to have their warrants in by January 2nd.
Right.
So how can it happen?
Because it's a citizen petition.
Tax years, they're
Yeah, I mean,
years different.
It's
Hold
because
on.
it says-
John, give us some clarification on petition policies.
There we go.
Citizen petitions are regulated by state law, so that it's only like, so many days before the actual election and the selectmen would have to call a special election and deal with something like that. I think what you're talking about is people putting a request for money.
Right,
Yeah, so that we can get
Okay.
that on the town meeting.
Okay.
Correct.
warrant. One thing that I didn't hear, which I think is important, is when we had the moratorium discussion, the medical marijuana is not opt-in like the recreational marijuana.
It is now.
Oh, it is?
It is now. That was the problem why we needed the moratorium, because
Right.
it wasn't.
Okay, and that
Sorry.
clarifies that. I wanted to make sure everybody
It is now.
saw the distinction, but okay, good.
so what you're saying is if we don't have this, somebody could just make something up and put, and.
Basically.
Okay, so that's very good to know.
Yeah, we don't wanna do that.
Okay,
Points answered, asked and answered. I've had a hand waiting, Larry. Hang on. All set, pal?
yeah,
Luke?
Just want to remind everybody that 52% of this town, Rangeley residents, voted yes on adult use accessible cannabis. So,
yes,
and Farmington, I like to use that as a comparison, was 53%. And Farmington has 3 medical marijuana retail shops right now. I just had a conversation with Steve Kaiser today. I was like, are you getting any complaints for these? Is the sky falling? Or is traffic bad? Is it drawing a bad crowd? Or neighbors complaining? The answer to him was no. He hasn't heard a peep. Just occasionally an odor issue with some of the grow facilities, and that's all being addressed. And as we did in our ordinance that we wrote, we addressed it here as well, and I think we did a pretty good job. 65% of the country believes that recreational cannabis should be legal now. Over 90% believes that medical marijuana should be legal and accessible. So the argument's tough that it's going to mess Rangeley up and people aren't going to show up here. Mass is legal. New York and New Jersey are battling over legalization right now. Vermont's legal. New Hampshire's just medical at the moment. So people are coming from states, and the second homeowners that are saying, well, we don't want it here, are also the same people that lost the vote in that state also. So that's my 2 cents on that.
All right, thank you. Next. Yes, sir.
Steve, Tony McNaughton. I'd just like to piggyback on a couple of things that Gary has said. If you use Colorado as an example, which is the first state to have permitted marijuana use, there's some interesting statistics that have come out of there. First of all, and I also ran this by Leanna Wilbur just to be sure, no FDIC bank in the United States can do any lending for marijuana. For instance, if you want to open that business, such as Farmington, you cannot go to a bank and get a loan if it's an FDIC bank. So it's a strictly cash business. And in Colorado, there have been a lot of concerns about the transporting of money by the owner of the business, and robberies that have been occurring, because people looking for money know that it's a place where a lot of cash is being transmitted. So I think that's something you have to think about, the crime element that can come with it. The second thing is, it's a fascinating topic because I can't think of anything in my lifetime where a federal law is in effect, but state laws are superseding that. It hasn't been tested in too many places because most people have backed off from enforcing it in states where marijuana has been permitted. But it's interesting that the U.S. Border Patrol and the Maine Forestry Service still go out and look for patches of marijuana being grown, still do raids. So they're kind of working across threads. If the state and a local municipality approve it, they're still out there to enforce federal laws. So to me, that's something that's interesting. And the third and final point that I will share with you, I thought it was fascinating when the vote was going to be taken in the state. Prior to that, there was a lot of advertising and campaigning both for and against. They would run these ads for it, and then immediately behind it would be an ad from groups that were dealing with opiate addiction, that were dealing with drug addiction in the state. And so the signals that were sent out are, to me, just very mixed. In the last Highlander, it talked about how many kids in a 2017 survey in the Rangeley school system had either used, were using at all, of kids under 18. Some of these kids were 13 and 14 years old. So if we send out the signal, we're a town, we'd love to have it, and wherever we put it, to me that doesn't, you're not going to put it next to a school or a church, we know that. But wherever you put it, you're sending out signals, just hang on kids, till you reach that magical age when you can use it, then it'll be fine. In the meantime, in our programs in school about drug education and staying away from things, we're going to tell you about some of the problems with respiratory problems and other things that goes with the use of it. So I think that these are just things that we really need to work out before we just kind of jump on the bandwagon and say we're going to vote to approve it as a first starter, and then find where we're going to place it. Those votes that were taken, we all know about how many people in any municipality and in any state come out to vote. So when you say 50% of the electorate voted for something, that's true, of those voting. And I think that if this thing is talked about a little bit more, given a little bit more hearing, we'll begin to get a sense, if people are really for or against it, they're going to come out and vote for it. Finally, I agree with Gary on the whole business of getting a prescription. You have to go 82 miles round trip to get a prescription. I have a wife who has lupus. She has more stuff she takes than drugstores sell. And I'm a diabetic, so we make a lot of trips to Farmington. It would be, to me, unbelievable if we had even medical marijuana here, but you have to go all over the countryside to get what most people take as medication. So I would just caution us to really discuss it a lot more, think about the long-range ramifications and the signals we're sending out to the young people in the community that, it's fine. If you want to do it, fine. We have a smorgasbord of things that you choose in life. Choose that, don't choose it, what. But I can tell you, as a retired minister, I did a lot of counseling and referring people to drug counseling places over the years. In those days, we know that marijuana is not addictive in the sense that opiates are. I don't know of any drug addicts, other than people maybe that have been turned on through prescriptions and abuse of prescriptions, that started, that didn't start with marijuana. It's a culture that develops. It's a kind of a hanging around thing. You're going to let teachers that teach on their break go out and have, instead of a cigarette, have a marijuana? Think, well, no, Tony, we're not going to do that. Well, how can you police that? Colorado has reported massive increases in motor vehicle stops and accidents occurred to people using medical marijuana. So I just register as one person who loves Rangeley, will stay here if you have it or don't, but I just think we should need to study it a lot more.
Thank you, Tony. What I'm going to do next, folks, so that you can hear your representatives tell you their points of view, is ask my colleagues to weigh in. Cindy?
I would have liked to have seen some public feedback before this was drafted, in all honesty. What we're being presented is with a whole collection of marijuana businesses, starting at the bottom of page 3. This ordinance wants to permit 4 categories of commercial marijuana. They want to allow 2 retail stores, 2 cultivation facilities, 2 manufacturing facilities, and 2 testing facilities. Might as well call it Marijuanaville. And there was no basis. I mean, Luke, I know that you've been talking about this 52%, but that was 52% of the vote of the state referendum. It wasn't a...
Right here.
Yeah, I know, that 52% of the voters...
Please, let's not turn this into a debate.
But it wasn't a local vote. It wouldn't be like if we put out a survey now and got the real local flavor of, well, what do you want? I mean, I think a lot of people wanted to be able to grow their own and have that be their private business, and so be it. But I don't think that 52% gives a full license to 8 facilities regarding marijuana. Donna, you as well, you were part of this discussion in the town of Rangeley. Other towns have had surveys, have actively polled their residents, and another town who's got a lot of second home owners, they also made an effort to reach out to the second homeowners who see this or their homes as a sanctuary. I did 14 million in real estate closings last year. Time and time again, people come here for the natural beauty, to escape the pollution, the noise, Rangeley is a brand. We're sought after.
Cindy,
And
just a few more minutes, I want to get everybody in.
yeah, and so I was shocked to see the allowance of 8 facilities, and I guess I'm going to ask why. Why 2 of each? Luke?
Well, if you just use one facility, it seems like it kind of becomes a monopoly, so we kind of talked about that. And it's not, 8, I guess, seems like a big number, but it's not. You're not going to see all 8 clumped together in one spot. There's hundreds and hundreds of these things throughout the state. There's dozens of these already in this town. Half of them are probably illegal. I've had one going for years now. So they're not regulated the way they are now. Basically, by not doing this, I look at it as like, let's promote the old moonshining days or something, because that's what's going on now for the most part. And that doesn't mean we're going to have 8. My prediction is we have 2 retails up here, and the retails source it from other operations south of here. I would bet money, not saying how much, but we're not going to have all 8 of these things. And they're not a problem anywhere else in the way we zoned it. I think they're going to be very low key. Nobody's, for the most part, people aren't going to care.
Any more clarification on why the numbers?
I think we originally were working with the document we had 5, we said that's way too many. So, I can't give you a reason why it's 2, 2, 2, and 2, other than, it was a reduction. Not saying it's good, not saying it's bad.
Okay, thank you.
My one final comment is I'd like to see a person's home, often one's most valuable asset, protected in this ordinance. So at this point, we've got some very, a wonderful start, a wonderful range of those particulars that are protected: churches, playgrounds, the sidewalk that we talked about going to Loon Lake Road. That was a grant we received from the state of Maine, Safe pathways to school. So that is a publicly recognized school walkway. And that was just funded a few years ago, but I would like to see one's residents protected in this ordinance.
Thank you. Dave?
My opinion is, we as a board, it's not up to us and our individual opinions on whether or not something like this should go to the town. I think this is up to the townspeople to decide on whether they want it or don't want it. We've asked the ordinance committee to come up with something that works for both sides, is compromise, and I think they've done a great job at it. It protects us from just having, the Wild West where anybody can do whatever they want. If they start to do a petition on their own, they can write it the way they want to write it. So I think it's 100% in the vote of the townspeople, not at the board.
Shelley?
I attended the ordinance meeting, and unfortunately, it went more on everyone's personal opinion of what they wanted in the town. I understand that. We put the ordinance in place to try to protect what we have now, and I think we have a good variety of people that are on that. The only thing I was disappointed in is it wasn't more about the actual ordinance. I would like a meeting or a workshop that goes exactly, because there are a lot of unanswered questions. How many times do we always have questions that we're asking about? It's a mystery. So I think a lot of people, the more that they know, the more it encourages the power to understand it. There are a few other things that in the ordinance that I would love to go over with individuals. I mean, it's not necessarily here. There are towns that, like you said, Luke, originally everybody wanted it legalized, so people voted throughout the state of Maine to legalize marijuana. And our numbers were high, but you look at, for example, the town of Madison, they went through a questionnaire. They went through taking it up, do you want marijuana here or not? And they were just getting so much mixed messages. The question on the ballot was, do you want marijuana in our town? And that was voted against. So there are towns that are doing different things. The main thing is, I drive through Rumford, you drive through Rumford and Jay. My huge thing is the smell. I'm sorry, it's just, that is one thing. Like, you come to Rangeley, you want that fresh air. That is my main thing, is the smell of the facilities and stuff. So you can drive now, when you're driving, you can tell, oh, there's a grow. Just driving down Route 4. So that's my main thing. I know you're working on it, but I want it fixed first, but.
Thank you. All set?
That's that. Luke was gonna respond though.
I'm sorry?
Luke was going to respond.
Nope.
He's not, you're not allowed to.
Right over here.
Okay.
First just a quick thing we've tried to get a pharmacy in here since the day they closed the one up at the IGA, and you were on the board. And we thought we had a couple of things going on, and they just fell through. It's basically a matter of money. A lot of people have now gone to mail, get their stuff mailed. Are they gonna go back again? I don't know. Anyway, it's not like we haven't tried. And I don't think it's gonna happen unless I have no idea why anybody, hasn't, but it's gotta be the fact that it's not worth their while to do it. So anyway, and this thing, I'm to Dave, I kind of like the voters to vote on it, and it's not up to me, it's not up to him, it's not up to us. It's up to the townspeople, and without town meeting and having the ballot, we get a lot more people deciding on, instead of 75 people, we get 300 people deciding on stuff. And, the ordinance is not perfect, but all ordinances can be tweaked. And even if this passes, somebody wants to come in here and open a pot store, they're gonna have to go through so many hoops, it's not even funny. They will probably do it, but they're gonna have to go planning board, they're gonna have to go, show that they can do this, a lot of stuff. So it's, even if it does pass, the week after, you're not gonna see a pot store here. And they're gonna have public hearings about it, the planning board will. So Anyway, that's just my thought. I just like to, we did the best we could with this. We are gonna tweak a couple of things. Scott, you had a couple of things you wanted to tweak on this, right? From our public hearing, and we will. We haven't had a meeting since then. Anyway, and, so, that's just my thought. Let the voters figure this out.
You good? You good, Don? All set?
Yes.
All right, last but not least, it's 2 minutes after 6, and I do have a selectmen's meeting, but I do want to let you know a couple of things. Procedurally, you have lots more time to participate in where this goes. This is not decided tonight. Please.
I'm sorry, I just
No.
wanted to hear your opinion, because you
What?
canvassed the rest of the board, but you haven't given your opinion. I thought you might complete it.
I didn't get any of that because I was trying to, say it again.
You canvassed the rest of the board, but I was hoping that you would share your own opinions.
I was trying to get to that, and then I saw a hand go up, I stopped. Procedurally, you have a lot more time to weigh in on this thing and make sure the ordinance committee. But I do want to caution you, if you try to ignore this, you will be left with something that you will not be happy with. I can guarantee you that. And we've seen this in the past. I also want to point out that Rangeley offers lots of things. Farmington has 4 nice restaurants and bars. Rangeley has 20. So pay attention to what we all need for the future. And my personal opinion is we need to do this correctly. We need to not ignore it. And thirdly, we need to make sure that the voters speak, not the Board of Selectmen on this, because this is your town as much as it is ours. But I do want you to listen to my colleagues because they've been studying this. And Cindy brings good points, as does the rest of them, Dave. And I want to thank Donnie for chairing this and continuing the process forward. So we're going to close the public hearing on all this right now. You will notice that I didn't say whether I'm in favor or not. And I'm not going to. We're going to close the hearing 4 minutes after. I'm going to assume you all want to stay. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.